Hi, my name is Allison Keefe, and this is my CQI project for Nursing 711. I chose to study the effects of exercise on my anxiety level. So, the objectives for this presentation are to discuss the highlights of my CQI plan, review the PDSA activities and results, and reflect on some lessons I learned through this project. So, at the start of this semester, I noticed a significant increase in my anxiety and a significant decrease in the amount that I exercised. I had a suspicion that these two things were correlated, so I made a specific aim to exercise for at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week, by the end of April 8th, 2020. I chose to use the anxiety self-rating scale from the South African Anxiety and Depression Group. It's important to note that this scale scores from a 0 to a 40. Just remember that. We'll go back to that in a few slides. So every day I measured the amount that I exercised in minutes, and I measured my anxiety score to see if there was a correlation between the two. So PDSA activities and results. So my plan was to exercise at 8 a.m. on the days that I worked at the hospital and the days that I did schoolwork. That timing was very intentional because it essentially got exercise sort of out of the way for the day. I usually work at 10 a.m., so 8 a.m. was perfect just before work. And then also on the days that I did schoolwork, it allowed me to sort of get it out of the way so that later in the day I didn't have an excuse for not exercising. I chose not to exercise on clinical days. I usually had to go to clinical around 10 a.m. or excuse me at 7 a.m. and I wouldn't get home until about like 5:30 or 6. So those were long days. During the due phase, my initial data collection, I used the GAD-7, and that started on March 22nd. After some feedback from Dr. Lee, I chose not to use that scale. She pointed out that looks back at anxiety over a 2-week period. Just really wasn't appropriate for this study. So data collection started again using the anxiety self-rating scale on March 31st. Through the study phase, I did not find a direct correlation between anxiety and exercise. It's really, really important to note that our clinical was suspended, I think it was around March 17th, and that had a significant impact on my anxiety level. Not having clinical freed up about 25 hours in my week, meaning that I had all the time that I needed to do both exercise and schoolwork. So for the ACT phase, I'm going to continue to exercise because there are many, many benefits of exercise, even if this project does not specifically show a correlation between exercise and decreased anxiety. I will continue to exercise. Here is my histogram. You can see on the bottom that that's minutes exercised. Each one of those data points there along the bottom. You can also see my anxiety score on the y-axis. Here's where it's important to note that the rating goes all the way to 40. So my very highest score was a 6. And anything between 0 and 8 is considered minimal anxiety. So basically, I experienced minimal anxiety throughout the course of this study. I think it's also very important to note that the day that I scored a 6, when I exercised for 60 minutes, that was the day after I just worked a really, really tough shift in the ER. I was working the respiratory unit there. We had a respiratory code. We had to intubate a COVID patient. We're having all sorts of PPE issues, as I'm sure everyone is well aware of. It was just a really, really stressful day, and that could have caused the spike the following day. So it's arguable that that's actually really an outlier. Otherwise, really no direct correlation between amount exercised and anxiety. As you can see, I had zero anxiety when I exercised for 0 minutes, and I had zero anxiety when I exercised for 105 minutes. Here is my line chart, so you can see my anxiety score over time. Again, you can kind of see that one outlier when I scored a 6 that day after I worked in the ER. Otherwise, very minimal anxiety throughout the entire study. Okay, so self-reflection. Through this project, I realized that the PDSA model provides structure for problem solving that can be applied to many settings, whether that is a personal improvement project or a hospital-wide improvement project. it is broad enough that it can be applied to many different things, but also structured enough that it is actually useful. I do believe that that exercise will help decrease my anxiety, even though this study did not prove that. Um, I think that it would be particularly interesting that once clinical ramps up again and presumably my anxiety ramps up again, I would like to actually go back and apply the PDSA model and see if exercise can actually help me in those situations. I've also learned that there just simply is a maximum amount of work that I can take on. This is something I'm working on. I need to be better about saying no to people, saying no to certain commitments. I also need to be better about simply just closing the textbooks once in a while and putting them to the side. If it's having an adverse effect on my health, it's just not worth it. I also learned that even when things don't go according to plan, you can take something away from it. This entire project was kind of thrown off by the suspension of clinical, but still, I definitely learned a lot. So I can always take something away from it. And that is the end. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to your feedback.